and some pals, and there's also therapy too.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining me today. Today we have such an amazing treat. We got to talk to Jay Karras, who is a director, producer. He directed the Doppelgangers episode of Parks, which is so amazing, and we get into some awesome nuggets of behind the scenes details with working with this all-star cast, working with the crew, how he got the job, and then I do get a little bit nerdy about just the industry, how he got into, this field, what you would do if you were looking to get into the field. It's a really great episode that kind of covers a lot of bases. I probably could have talked to Zira for like 2-3 more hours, but in the interest of time for both you guys and our sake and his sake, I did not do that. So anyway, thank you so much to Jay. I really am so appreciative of all the time that he spent answering my questions, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. And we'll talk to you guys soon. If you have any questions, let us know. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, all the things, so that we can spread this fandom. Thank you so much, Park Pals, and thank you to Jay for doing this amazing interview, and talk to you guys soon. Okay, bye.
There's a park and some pals, and there's also therapy too.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you working it out with our schedules. I know it's crazy to get everybody together.
No, all good. Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Okay. So where are you right now?
I am in New York. I'm up in the Hudson Valley, about 90 minutes north of New York City.
Oh, okay. Nice. Okay. I was wondering if
Yeah.
you were still on your trip or whatnot. So, okay, cool. Glad we're on the same time zone.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Okay. Well, so one of the things that I always ask, like I already told you, but one of the things that I always ask our guests is how you got your job on Parks, if you knew anyone, what the story was, if you like sent in an audition, or I know obviously you're not an actor, but how did you get your job on Parks?
So it works in several different ways in terms of how I get jobs normally, but this was definitely an instance of me being persistent, perhaps a little bit annoying, and asking for the job. It was, it's an interesting thing because there are all these barriers put up. Like at age 27, I had become a showrunner kind of unexpectedly. So I had a ton of experience already, and I was 40 by the time I did Parks. But I had done a lot of episodic as well as a showrunner and some as a director, but not that much in terms of half-hour narrative. And at the time, there was this big distinction between network and cable. And I had done cable. I hadn't done a network half hour yet, even though it's the same job. It's actually easier on network because there are more resources. And I just loved Parks and Rec so much. And I really wanted to do the show. And one of my really close friends, Dean Holland, was the producing director on the show. So he was an exec producer. He'd been there from the beginning. He had started as an editor, became a director, and then was an EP on the show. So he was really close with Mike Shore. And he was really instrumental in getting me in there. And then also my friend Donick Carey, who wrote the episode that I directed, coincidentally, also a very close friend, was really kind and put a word in with Mike Shore. And then a mentor of mine named Troy Miller, another prolific director, also did it. So Mike Shore had Dean Holland and Donick Carey and Troy Miller all saying, "You got to talk to this guy, Jay. You got to consider him." So there was a slot available, and I happened to get that slot on season 6, and it was just a matter of persistence. And when I actually finally met Mike Shore, he even said, he's like, I got a lot of people telling me that I should bring you in here. So that's how it happened.
A lot of people pulling for you.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing where I don't like asking for help, and I don't like asking for a job, but sometimes that's it's by necessity that you kind of have to do that. And this is an instance where it definitely worked out.
Totally. Well, and not only did you have people that were pulling for you, but I feel like you are talented. It's not as if people were like going out on a limb just to go out on a limb. You know what I mean? Like it all combined in a way. And you can probably tell from my emails that I am the same way as far as persistence goes. If I try to find all different avenues of how to get in touch with you, because it's not only the work ethic, but it's also such a passion. And I feel like those two combined are you have to have those two to like make like not only a living, but just like be happy in what you're doing and proud of your work, you know?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And you're right. At that point, I mean, I had worked with people like Paul Rudd and Will Ferrell and Jack Black and Reese Witherspoon and Charlize Theron. Like I'd worked with kind of an amazing
Yeah.
roster of people, but there's still, at the time, there was still that stigma of, well, he hasn't directed a half hour before on a network half hour. So it was, but once I did that one, it became so much easier, as you can imagine, especially season 6 of Parks was like peak Parks and Recreation. So after that episode came out and people enjoyed it, it made it a lot easier from there. So it was actually it opened a lot of doors for me.
Totally. I hear
Yeah.
that from a lot of guest actors as well, that it was maybe their first or, first 5 shows that they had been on. And they're, always saying that it's so much nicer to have that on your resume, especially Parks. And like you said, yeah, season 6, every episode that we review in season 6, I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, this is the best episode. And then I'm like, oh no, wait, this one is the best episode. So it's a great season, I feel, to come in.
Dean and I had
Dean?
met
Did you guys
years
work together as
before.
far
I
as
think we met
directing
in
goes?
like 1999, and I was working with there was an editor who's now also does a lot of directing, a really good friend of mine named Bill Durande, and I worked with Bill a lot as an editor. And there was a project I had, and Bill wasn't available. He's like, "But I got this amazing guy named Dean Holland," and Dean ended up editing this project, and we ended up spending hours and hours and hours in an editing bay together when we were in our late 20s. And when that kind of thing happens, you can, if the personalities mesh, you can become really good friends. So we ended up spending a lot of time together in edit rooms, and then became friends. And then Dean went off and started directing, and I was directing, and we've stayed in touch. We're still very good friends to this day. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, I feel like I've kind of slowed down talking about him because now we're in season 6, but I would say from seasons like 1 to 4, I would constantly bring up Dean because not only has he directed and produced and everything, but he was just is such a backbone of why the mockumentary style is so beautiful. And like here, obviously because of Greg Daniels and Mike Schur as well, but with The Office and like that editing, with it being so real and just like cutting so fast after the joke or after the laugh or whatever it is, was just such a Dean move. And so you see that kind of transfer over to Parks when he directs and edits and everything. I think by season 6 he's not editing, according to IMDb and everything. But anyway, yeah, so I talk about him all the time. So that's really cool. Well, so I was going to ask too, I mean, speaking about the people that you've worked with before, I guess that was good practice for everybody in Doppelgangers that you directed, because the amount of the all-star cast that they had in that episode alone was out of this world. And I was just curious kind of how that worked. Like, did you know that they were going to be there? Did you know anything before you got to set? And did you have any hand in
It's a really good question.
Or I wouldn't think so. That,
I mean, first of all, I'm just consider myself so incredibly lucky to have gotten this episode, because it was the first time that, it's the episode where the Eagleton office gets combined with the Pawnee office, and we meet all these people. So like Billy Eichner and Sam Elliott, and I mean, just these incredible, incredible actors, and June Diane Raphael. I was so pleasantly shocked when I got that episode and when I saw who was going to be doing it. I wasn't involved in the early casting, because sometimes as a guest director, I mean, you always get sort of looped in and theoretically consulted, but on that, it's like a much bigger picture thing, because like, oh, these are the people from Eagleton. So it's not just about my episode. It's about, bringing people into the series. So I wasn't involved in the casting of those, but was obviously really excited when I learned who they were. On the other guest actors, I was in the loop more on that stuff. But yeah, as far as like the Eagleton people, that was before I was even there. They were working on that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so cool. Did you know
I had just heard of them, and
before
I
you
remember
got
at one
to
point
set,
I was
or had you
working
just
with
kind of heard
Billy
them?
Eichner, and he was so, his first time on Parks, and he was so good. And at one point, and I knew him from Billy on the Street, and I asked him, I was like, Billy, have you done other like half hour stuff like on sets? And he's like, no, this is my first thing. And I was really shocked because he was so intuitive, and you just never would have known. Like you would have thought that he'd been in, 1,000 episodes of a sitcom. Like he was just such a talented actor, and he just knew how to do it. And obviously, his background and his training, and it lent itself to it naturally. But it was really wonderful how adept he was in the beginning. And then, I mean, to be able to work with Sam Elliott was unreal. One of the most interesting things about working with Sam is, as you know, he's a stalwart actor. He's been doing this forever, and he is so incredibly well respected. And he's just top tier in terms of like he's one of the best. But coming into Parks and Rec on my first day with him, he pulled me aside, and I can't imagine he would. I'm sure he's okay with me saying this. He pulled me aside, and this wasn't his realm in terms of 3 cameras, 2 cameras, 3 cameras, three, and just improv and it being loose. Like he's much more used to, this is a designed shot and it's going to go here and it's going to go into a close up. Like it, yeah, like well, and more crafted filmmaking. This is like dramatic. A looser comedic improvisational style, and he had just never really done it before. And he told me in the beginning, he's like, I got to tell you, I'm a little nervous acting with all these incredibly talented improvisational actors. It's just not what I do. He's like, so help me out. I was like, Sam, I have a feeling you're going to be okay here. And obviously he was great. And then there was one other point. I don't remember what day in the 5-day shooting schedule, called day 2, day 3. I just remember at one point he pulled me aside. He's like, oh, are you getting what you need from me? I can't tell. Cause he's used to like that camera is right there, and he knows it's on a 40 millimeter lens, and he knows what the shot is, but there's a camera that's going from, Ron over to the other Ron and to Amy. Like it's just everywhere at all the time. And he never knew exactly what the shots were. So, it was an interesting process where we explained him just the mode of the coverage and how it works. And I just, there was a point in the middle where I just reassured him, like, just keep doing what you're doing. I promise it's great. And then one of the highlights of my entire career thus far, I don't think it'll ever get supplanted by anything else. At wrap, Sam came up to me and he gave me a big hug, and he just got right in my ear. And he goes, yeah, I was 40, but I was still a younger director. And he goes, you got a good career ahead of you, kid. And it was kind of amazing. So we had a really nice week together, and I was honored to be able to be the guy that was the one to sort of help him get into this world. And then, his character stayed on and did multiple episodes. And obviously he didn't need my help. He just was articulating that this was different for him and just wanted, to know that someone had his back. Yeah. Yeah, it was cool.
That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, what a great story. Oh my gosh. Well, and it's so nice to hear that, how humble he is, even though, like you said, he didn't really need the help, but it was more of a guidance and just wondering if he was maybe some just validation assurance. But to hear that he needed that was really interesting. It was incredible.
There's one other story I feel compelled to tell you because it's just a good full circle moment, just kind of a behind the scenes thing. So
yes, tell
Parks
me.
and Recreation was shot at the CBS Radford lot in Studio City. And on the first day that I rolled in for my first day of prep, I drove up to the gate on Radford, and I rolled down the window and I handed my license, and they asked for my name and what I was doing there. And I told them, and I suddenly realized in that moment what an incredible full circle moment it was for me, because when I was 20 years old, I was an intern for a boutique production company, and we were shooting a show for Fox. It was like a year-end special, and it was like Fox and Rolling Stone magazine. It was called Rolling Stone, The Year in Review. And we shot these really cool interviews on film for that show. One interview was with Jerry Seinfeld. One was with Katie Lang. Both of those interviews were shot on that CBS Radford lot on the Seinfeld stage. And when Katie Lang was arriving at the studio, I was an intern. So I was there to intern and basically like a PA that day, but for free. And they said, "Hey, Katie Lang is arriving. Will you go out to the gate and be the one to meet her, show her where to park, and then walk her to the stage?" I was like, "Yeah, absolutely." So I'm standing out there, and the spot where I was standing was at this gate where 20 years later, I was handing my license over to pull up to direct my favorite television show. And the exact same spot where 20 years earlier I was an intern, showing Katie Lang where to park. So it was a really cool, as you can imagine, really, really exciting moment for me. And it also, the other crazy component of that was I had just finished shooting my first feature film called Breakpoint on that Friday. So then that Monday I'm showing up to prep an episode. So I had just shot like in 110-degree heat for 5 weeks, it was an indie movie, and I was so tired and so fried, but also so excited to be doing parks and to be working with Mike Shore and my friend Dean and my friend Donna, who wrote the episode. And then on top of it, I pulled in and I had that light bulb moment. It's like, oh my God, this is where I met Katie Lang 20 years ago. So it was a great sort of like, all right, wake up and appreciate this and go in and do your best. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the universe is so talking to you in that moment. I love those moments so much. And I'm so glad that you had the wherewithal to like remember that too. Because I feel like a lot of people just kind of, let it swoop by and don't really like, have the memory to think about how it's such a full circle moment. And you as an intern, unpaid, now going to do the TV show. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you shared that. That's so great. Oh my God. So, were you there? How long were you there for? You said you
So
started
I
on a
don't actually. It
Monday.
might have been a Tuesday.
Was it like a
It was
week
either
shoot,
4
or
or
how'd
5
that
days
work for
prep.
you?
Typically on these on the like a network half hour, you get either 4 or 5 days prep. So you prep either Monday through Friday or Tuesday through Friday, and then you shoot the next Monday through Friday. That's the sort of normal schedule, and this was definitely in that pattern. So it was either 4 or 5 days, and then a 5-day shoot, and then you get to go in for. At the time, everyone was still doing editing in person. Now it's you can do it remotely if you want, but you go in for 2 days of editing for your director's cut. Yeah. So it's a pretty quick process.
Okay. And so I mean, it sounds like, well, especially by the time you got to be on there, I mean, it was such a well-oiled machine. I feel like they just had everything locked. But so you had said that you hadn't done like this kind of 30-hour format. What were you kind of working on before? Like what? And then the second follow-up question to that is, how did you feel going into this new
So I had
energy,
done
this new kind of atmosphere of the
so when I
three-camera
started
comedy?
at 27, when I was a showrunner, that my first showrunning job was I was in the sort of like awards and variety world in my 20s, kind of coming up as a producer. So then I ended up running the VH1 Vogue Fashion Awards in year 2000 alongside Anna Wintour. So I worked with Anna Wintour for 3 months. And
Oh, wow.
I did what I learned from my boss
gosh.
before that, when I had my 5-year staff producing job. When I became showrunner of the show, it was like the big spectacle of like the big multicam award shows at the theater at Madison Square Garden. It's a 2-hour live show. All these amazing people were there, and it's a really fun show. But within the body of these award shows, there were always these comedic single camera short films, like the funny short films. And I hired myself to direct the single camera short films within that show that I was running. And I remember I went to my exec at VH1 at the time, and she was really wonderful. I had worked with her for several years as a producer on that show, but she was the one that called me and asked if I wanted to run it that year. And I remember asking, "Are you sure?" Because I hadn't done it before. And she's like, no, let's do it. So I went to her and I said, "Hey, I have an idea for someone that could direct the short films for the show." And her name is Lauren Zalaznik. She was really, really instrumental in helping me start directing, because she's like, "Oh yeah, who do you think?" I was like, "Oh, there's this young director out there. His name is Jay Karras." And she's like, "I think Jay Karras would do a good job. We should do that." So that's how I started directing these shorts. So that's how I built up a comedy reel. And that's where I did shorts for shows I was running. And then I started working. I did like some ad TV, and I did a show for Comedy Central that my friend Donna Carey brought me into. So I ended up with this short film reel of Will Ferrell, Jack Black, Paul Rudd, all these incredible people. And then I got the job so 10 years later, I got the job running a series called After Lately with Chelsea Handler, which was a Larry Sanders-esque half-hour comedy that we shot with 3 cameras. We shot it kind of Office, Parks and Rec style. And so I got that and Eagle Heart, which was a single camera thing for Adult Swim with Chris Elliott and Brett Gelman and Maria Thayer. It's just an amazing, amazing cast of incredibly talented people. So I was just coming off of both Eagle Heart and After Lately. And on After Lately, we had like Reese Witherspoon and Charlize Theron, all these incredible, and Jane Fonda. And that was so that was my first true half hour. So I was kind of in that mode of doing that kind of a show with 3 cameras, doc style. So it was a really easy and natural progression over to Parks. But the biggest jump was, I remember on day one of prep, amazing AD named Steve Day was like, he was so great at sort of guiding me through the Parks specific process. And that's where it's so funny. They say, oh, you've done a cable half hour, you can't do a network half hour. And now that thought is antiquated. But at the time, there was this thing like, oh, I don't know if someone hasn't done a network half hour, how they're going to do it. It's so much easier because I remember being in my first sit down with Steve, and we're going through, and he's like, hey, for this opening scene with the town hall meeting, what do you think in terms of background? And I'm used to on these shows, like you have like, you're lucky if you can get 5 background or 8 background, there was a limited extras budget. And he asked me the question. I was like, yeah, I don't know. I'm not. And I was thinking maybe like 85 would be good. And I remember I was like, yeah, sure. 85 is great. 85 sounds fantastic. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. And I was like, oh my God. And that was where it clicked instantly. It was like, okay, that's what a network half hour is. There's just more money, more resources. And to me, as a result, everything's just easier. So it's not like a leap, like a huge leap to get into that. It's more like, oh, now there's money for extras and toys and resources to just get the job done. Even some, just a straighter path to kind of getting it done.
Oh, interesting. And I think it's so much, I mean, it's annoying in the moment, maybe when you don't have those resources, but it's such a nicer, I think, to go from the way you did it as opposed to like having those resources and then not having them. So that's, oh my gosh.
No, and then I remember like we shot that cold open with the town hall, and then all the people were there, and then we, it didn't take that long to shoot that scene, and then they just like all go away and we're in the office and they're just there for that one scene. And I remember just really marveling at how nice it was to be able to do that. But the other side of it is on shows where you don't have those resources, it forces you to be more inventive in some ways. And sometimes you end up coming up with ideas that you never would have come up with otherwise when you don't have those kinds of resources. So it's both versions of it are great. They're just different ways to do it.
Yeah. Was there anything else that you kind of wanted to ask for, but were unsure, and then you kind of saw like, oh, well, I could ask for
not
this?
That I recall. I mean, it's kind of like you said, like the show is a really well-oiled machine, and my only
on the DL.
I believe my only location in that was the dinner, the meal at the end with Adam Scott and Rob Lowe. That we shot that at Johnny's Smokehouse in the Valley, not that far from the lot. And everything else was on the stage. Right. So there wasn't like a big ask that I recall. And if there was, it probably would have been fine to get it.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I'm always curious too, speaking of asks and how comfortable you are asking for things or whatever. I guess you knew people, so that does make it maybe a tiny bit easier. But I am curious always for guest actors, sure, but also for directors and crew, what it's like. And if you could talk about what it's like to be on a show, just kind of a one and done situation, like you're the new kid in school, but you're also in a little bit of an authority position as the director. Obviously everyone on Parks was so great, and I'm really lucky to be able to talk to people like you that are willing to discuss and I can learn from. But I am curious from your point of view.
You're exactly right. You're the new kid at school every time you go in for a new episode as a guest. And it's funny, I didn't definitely didn't realize it at the time, but I've thought a lot about this in the intervening years. But when I was a kid, we moved a couple times. So like I moved like a month into third grade. So I was the new kid there. And then I changed schools in fourth grade and I was a new kid again. And then we moved again for eighth grade. So I was like, I had a few kind of starting over new kid things in my childhood that I feel like were later very instrumental for me in being able to kind of roll in and just be the new kid and kind of fit in. It's hard though. I'm very used to it, but you definitely have to kind of gear yourself up. And you're right there. You have to kind of present yourself as a person who knows what they're doing and can be in charge. But you also have to be incredibly deferential to what that show is and the machinery that's already set up. And it really depends on the show. I mean, the cast at Parks and Rec, I always tell people still ask me, because, I shot this 10 years ago, more than that. Oh my gosh, I shot it 12 years ago.
Crazy.
And I always tell people, like, my first answer is Parks and Rec is one of my favorites, because it was season 6, and a lot of shows you go in that late and the cast is like, what am I doing? What scene are we doing? They're just like tired. They don't really care. They're not into it. And season 6 of Park had season 1 energy. It was, everyone was so happy to be there. They were grateful to be there. And that came from the top down. It was Mike Shore and Amy Poehler setting the tone. Like Amy Poehler, I wasn't in the hair and makeup trailer first thing, because that's not where I go first thing in the morning. But I heard like she'd go in first thing in the morning, like there'd be music, and it was just like a great environment to start the day. And the way that Mike Shore and David Miner and David Hyman and Morgan Sackett and all those guys ran that show, and the way like Dean did his thing, everyone was just so nice and welcoming, and it was this incredibly collaborative environment. It's apparent really quickly that everyone's on the same team. So like for me, when I meet these actors, it's just about the confidence came from, I'd already I'd been working in the business for 20 years at that point. Not as long as a director, but I'd been in the business a long time, and I'd been on set a lot. So you just kind of, it feels like home when you're on set. And then I always you just have to kind of show people that you have a plan. So during prep, you meet them and hopefully present that yourself in a way where they have some confidence in you. And then when you get set, as long as you have a plan that makes sense, then there's an instant kind of respect and rapport that can be developed. And I always go into the first thing I say on the first day of directing any new thing is, I always tell the actors, I'm coming in with a plan, because during prep, I block out the scenes and I have an overhead view with my shot list, like a diagram where the actors are going to be. That's the blocking for the scene. So I always tell them I have a plan, and I present what my thought is for what the scene should be. But I always tell them I'm open to input. And if a better idea comes up on the day, I'll throw my plan in the garbage and pivot and do theirs. And I feel like that's always disarming, where it shows like I've thought about it. I know what I think this should be, but I'm also open to it's open to interpretation.
Yeah, and I think that, like, going back to what you said, is totally Amy Poehler and Mike Scher's energy too. They've talked about kind of at length about how it's not about ego. Mike Scher's rule is no assholes. That's his favorite thing to say, which is a very simple but also kind of hard thing to do sometimes, not only in this industry but just like in general. So it's a great rule to have. But I think that they've talked multiple times about, like, if the grip has a better idea than what's in the scene, then let's like try it at least and see what we can do. And that, I think, also kind of goes back to, especially during this season, but I think it was from the beginning, that they had the kind of resources and that mindset of like, we know what we're doing now. They had just done The Office with that same kind of mindset. And Amy is also, every time I hear people talk about her, I'm just like, fall more in love with her. With the ideas that she has and the way that she welcomes everyone's energies and ideas and thoughts and creativity.
Yeah,
it's always
absolutely.
Really inspiring to hear that.
The
so
other
it's good to know that you felt the same.
Really amazing thing that was just made it so comfortable was, my friend Donick, who wrote the episode. It wasn't planned that I direct the episode that he wrote. It just kind of worked out. Yeah, it was just a really wonderful coincidence.
That's so
and
crazy.
he's a very, very good friend. And so there I am. Like I told you the story about showing up at the gate. That was the gate I was at 20 years ago as an intern. And I'm on this show that I love. And Mike Shore was so wonderful and everyone was so wonderful. And then I'm on set with my friend, because the way that it works is the director and the writer are on set. And it's so funny. The other thing that was really hilarious was I thought, because again, like this is peak Parks and Rec. I thought that when I remember during prep, I walked down to set and I thought there'd be like 30 people from the network, like just hanging out and trying to provide input and just being there. And I got down to set and it was strangely quiet. Like there was, all the like hair and makeup's there, but in terms of like the video village, it was just the writer and the director and script supervisor. It was really small and really quiet. And I was like, where is everybody? Like, what do you mean? It was like, the people from the network aren't here? Like, no, they just let us do our thing. I was like, oh my God. So on set, it was just, I was there with Donick and Mike Shore came by once just to say, like, he came down, I was like, I'm just here to say hello. Like, he was there for like a minute just to say hi. So I really appreciated the way he ran the show. And it really stuck out to me because, and now I've been on, so many different shows with so many different showrunners and everyone has their own different style. But in there's a thing called the tone meeting, which depending on the show where it is, but like for me, it was at or near the end of prep where you go in with the showrunner and whomever else they want in the room, and you're there with your AD, and you just go through scene by scene, and they get to tell you what their intent was with the writing of the scene and any specific thing that they envision and anything specific thing that they want you to get. And sometimes there's talk of like, oh, this is how I imagine the scene playing out, and it's an opportunity for the director and the showrunner to kind of talk and ask and answer questions. And I remember at the end of it, he said, all right, go make a great episode. And that was it. Like, it was kind of like, okay, we've talked, you know what I want. I know it feels like you're going to get what I want and you have great ideas, go do it. And then I was there with Donick and we just got to just do the show. And it was so great. It was just really incredible. Yeah.
That's awesome. And it sounds so like, I don't know, freeing in a way to be able to kind of do what you need to do, but know that you're really professional fun. And also working with your friend. What a dream. That would be so cool.
No, I hadn't. Donick and I met actually.
Did you say that already? Sorry.
When I was working on the MTV Movie Awards, it was like 1996 or 1997. I actually hired Donick's wife to work on the show. And that's how I met Donick. And then we ended up doing a show together in like 2000 or so and just became friends from there. But yeah, I met his wife, Kim, first. Yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah. Okay. Love that. Okay. Lovely, lovely. Now, when you're on set and you've already done your blocking and everything like that you are thinking for the plan. Did you have a lot to do with the characters kind of, descriptions, if you will, like how they mirrored each other? Like, I guess my boilerplate question, boiling it down, bottom line is, did you give a lot of direction to the actors, or was it more
the Eagleton characters guidance? Were being established for the first time, so that was a lot of the conversation with Donick and with Mike Shore, and Dean and everyone there leading up to the episode shooting, all during prep, is like, really digging on like, who are these people? What do you envision for this character? The writing is so good that it's kind of there on the page, but obviously everything you read is subjective. So there was a lot of conversation about like how, like Tinnifer, like how dumb is Tinnifer? How ditzy, how crazy. So it's that, and like that tone needs to talk about like the tone of each of these characters. And for Billy Eichner, they're like, yeah, we basically want him to kind of do like akin to what he does on Billy on the Street. So in terms of direction, and again, it's so long ago, I don't remember all the specifics, but I mean, obviously there's always shaping. So like they all came in, they all came in a way where they had a wonderful take on what it needed to be. So I didn't need to do much. And at that point, it's really about levels. Like, okay. Oh, and also Mike had a rule where first 2 takes, no notes for the actors, no matter what. So, and like, unless something is really wrong. So you show them blocking and you do 2 takes, let them get 2 takes out. And then you can talk about ideas of what you want to do. So at that point though, for all these actors who are so incredible, it was really about levels. Like, oh, like maybe this line, instead of like being like, let's be a little smaller, or let's go bigger with this line. It's those little kind of adjustments so that when you get in the edit bay, you can make those adjustments. I use the word calibrate a lot. I always like to think of it as a calibration, because when you're in one scene and you have a joke playing a certain way, it's always nice to get options on just levels, because then when you look at it in that scene in the context of a 30-minute episode or a 1-hour episode or whatever it is, the whole episode, maybe you realize that the way that joke landed is a little similar than this other one 10 minutes later. So maybe use the other option on like the simpler read to just differentiate, or for whatever reason, there's a really nice calibration that can take place when you look at the whole picture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd love to ask Donick maybe someday about the Jennifer Aubrey Plaza situation, because I feel like they were playing off of, because Aubrey Plaza, I don't know if they did this on purpose or if she did this in her real life, but they kind of brought this up a lot, where she could impersonate / talk to anyone about, or like by them, you know what I mean, like impersonating the other person so that they feel like comfortable. She did I think the first time she did it was during Leslie's campaign, and she was being like an old Southern lady to the person on the phone. She was being like a Hispanic young girl to the person on the phone, and then it just kept happening. And then this Jennifer thing happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so perfect. And so I didn't know if that was like a specific thing to Aubrey, or if that just kind of happened, but maybe it's a little bit of both.
I wish I remembered the details of that. I just don't recall, but all I remember is, what I do remember about that is that when the two of them got together for the first time, like we were like, everyone was just dying. Like, I remember that. I feel like she came in with that. I think it was on the page. That's something I'd have to research and let you know, in terms of what was in the script or not. But no, like I do remember out of the gate in the first rehearsal, the two of them together were like, we were all like, we could just watch this all day. It was perfect. So funny.
I know they need to do the side shows or side episodes, or if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like all those Eagleton characters came in kind of out the gate fully formed, especially Billy. He was so just, this is Craig, the end. Like, there's really, I mean, nothing he needed to add to it, because it was layered. I think a lot of people look at Craig and they're thinking like he's just this mad, angry person, but I think he showed, not only in the writing but in his acting, it was a great combination. I think he shows a lot of like genuine like insecurities and vulnerabilities, and I thought that was a really nice touch to add to his normal Billy on the street, just like rage, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, I hadn't seen the episode in years, so I rewatched it this morning in preparation for talking with you. And one thing that really struck me was Donna says it in the episode, like Craig cares so much. Cared so much about the town. Like when he steals a phone from her and is yelling about the grass, like, I need this kind of grass and I need the discount, and then he hands her the phone back. Like, he wasn't doing it because he's angry. He does it because he actually really cared. And then when he's leaving for the day, he says to Donna, he tells her, he's like, I love you and don't ever change, something like that. But then he turns and sees Aziz and he's like, who are you? Like, so he's just up and down. But like when he cares about the job or cares about a person, it's there, but it's amidst all this like seeming son of rage and anger and just erraticness. It's funny.
Totally. Well, and then Donna even says to Leslie, I think he might care more than you. And that's really so fascinating because we haven't met a character that might care more than Leslie. But also it was a nice catalyst to Leslie losing her mind that everyone might be leaving. And that was a really interesting way to see like Leslie's crash out and the sugar mustard cookies and all these things.
Yeah.
So I love this episode so much for that reason, because I feel like it shows so many different layers to everyone. And in particular, well, I say in particular, but it's really, I'm just not at this point, I'm just going down the line, but with Ron, with Pawnee Ron, and showing how much you would think that he loves Eagleton Ron. But it just is such a that was really great writing too, where you think that it's gonna be like BFFs, but then they're totally opposite.
Well, it's so good too because the way it was structured, like there's the initial meetup, and then it just cuts to the quick little testimonial from Ron. I like Ron, and then later he just like when Sam Elliott's articulating all the things that he stands for and believes in, and Ron's just getting more and more furious, and then it just cuts to Ron's like, I no longer like Ron. Like it's just such a great way to tee it up and pay it off later.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of kind of the cuts and the transitions and things like that, is that something that's more so in the editing, or is that something that where you yell cut when you know that, we could end this scene in a funny way? Does that make sense?
It does. So the way that it worked on Parks was, well, first of all, like they didn't, they just kept rolling. Like the cameras were like, I forget exactly what cameras they were, but they were like, we would just like, you put the camera, like the take would end and you'd reset, but like they would just put the cameras down. They literally keep rolling. So it had this energy of like, unless like hair and makeup really needed to come in, because usually you call cut and then there's a stop down and hair and makeup come in, they do last looks, they check, we talk about notes, and there's that rhythm, which is quite normal too. But on Parks, it was, we're still rolling. So you do a take, and it's like, all right, great, let's, and I'd go in and have a notes conversation with the actors, but the cameras were still physically rolling, so people weren't coming in unless they had to. And Mike Shorter's thing was that he articulated during my prep was like, I want to maximize shooting time, and I want to be able to give the actors as many takes as possible, because he just wanted all the options, all the comedic options that he could possibly get. So lighting was really quick. And by keeping it rolling, like it just kind of keeps an energy up where the momentum is kept up in a different way. It just keeps going.
Totally, which I think lends itself to that mockumentary style too, where
and
I they don't do it as often. They used to do it so much, but I really like the spy shots that they used to do, like kind of hiding behind the blinds or the window or whatever, and the actor doesn't know that they're there. Which I think I've heard from actors in interviews, that helps them a lot to not really think of the camera. You know what I mean? Especially for this type of style. But I don't think they've done it in a hot minute, because I think now we're kind of like just rolling with it. So that makes a lot of sense though, and why it feels so natural, because of the keeping rolling, staying in the energy, staying in that atmosphere.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
But then also the camera operators on that show were an incredibly integral part of the storytelling, because they're behaving like a docu-crew. So they're like, even when they would kind of reframe and like push in on someone, that was like, Parks is all about like the timing of when that happened up against when how a line would land could impact whether it's funny or funnier or less funny. And so sometimes some of the little fine tuning, sometimes there was a note on the take where I'd have no notes for the actors really, but like a note for camera, like, hey, let's wait until they say the word waffle to do the reframe, because I think if we do it right on the heels of that word, it might land even better. So a lot of it is, I mean, they again, season 6, they were so intuitive with the actors' behavior and how it worked. They really didn't need that much, but that was like a fun thing to be able to kind of nerd out about with the operators too, is to figure out what, like, the timing of a whip pan and back, or the timing of a reframe, or the timing of a zoom out, or when do we go from like this wide to kind of crash into a tight shot. And one of the things I did in my prep for that show, which was a really interesting exercise, was I watched episodes of Parks with the sound off. And if you do that, if you go back and do that with that or The Office, and I do Abbott Elementary every year too, like same kind of thing. If you watch it with, especially Parks, you watch it with the sound off, you will realize how much the camera is moving and zooming in or out. Like you don't clock it as much, because you're just you're watching, and it's part of the whole visual language of the show. But when you turn the sound off and you're really thinking just about that, it's pretty shocking. Like, it's moving all the time. It's so active, more than you would really think. So that was an interesting thing to look at for prep, to kind of think about how the camera was a component of the comedy in the show.
Oh my gosh. Yes. So many things to say. First of all, I talked to Shauna Hagen. She was on seasons 1 through 4, I believe, maybe 5, 1 through 4, I think. She's a camera operator, and she's amazing, first of all, but I was just so shocked at the level of intricacy and detail that she was talking about.
Mhm.
And that's so fascinating about watching it silently, because another like analytical thing that I do is, well, I don't know if it's analytical, but I don't think normal audience members do this. I'll pause it if I need to zoom in on something or whatever. And the way that the quickness of the camera, the speed and how natural it is in normal time, but if you're pausing, you're like, "Oh god, they're already on to the next thing." But they
Yeah.
started at this really important thing that is so fast, but just makes it so much more interesting. So like there'll be times when I'll pause it and it's blurry, so I'll have to go back or whatever. And normal shows, or not normal, but non-mockumentary might not have that style. So
Mhm.
that's super interesting to me. And kind of one of the things that Shauna talked about that I'll always kind of remember and hold with me is that, just to what you were saying, to your point, she said that her and Nick Offerman would always have like a chemistry, if you will, which I thought that was so fascinating. Like she'd know when to zoom in or cut away from him or cut to him, because they kind of created that rapport with each other. And after having worked with each other for so long, and I was like, that is something, had I not talked to her, would never have thought about, them be the camera being a character that has chemistry with another character.
Yeah, no, it's totally true because if you think about it, the camera operators are looking at these people's faces all day, every day for
Yeah.
seasons, and they get to know them as actors in a way that is so specific and in a way that most others won't, at a level that most others won't get to, just because like they're literally focused on them all the time.
Yeah. And
And
I think that's fascinating that you said that you would give a note to them. That's really interesting. That's something I'm going to think about a lot too.
yeah, and same on Abbott. Like every time I'm at Abbott, I really think a lot about being at parks too, because it's the same kind of thing. Like the operators are so good and so tuned into the story. And sometimes on Abbott, what I do is we'll rehearse a scene, and then I'll do a quick huddle up with the 3 operators, and I'll share with them before we start shooting, while we're lighting, like, hey, just so you know, like, and I'll share with them thoughts I have on specific moments where I either want to whip or where I want to reframe and push in, or so I'll tell them specific things that I've thought of so that they can have that in mind as we go, and then we refine together. And I definitely have witnessed moments where they'll have, like, especially like on Abbott, Tyler James Williams, who plays
Oh my God, so good.
Gregory, is he's incredible. He's like the master of those looks to camera.
His looks to camera, yes.
He's unbelievable at that, and he and the operators have, and it's not always the same operator that's on Tyler. It's depending
Mm.
on what the scene is. It could be A camera, B camera, C camera. So he's really established a rapport with all the operators, and I think like the directors who understand that format can really work with the camera operators and the actors to kind of fine tune the timing, and that's where you get, it's like it squeezes out the funniest version of whatever that thing can possibly be based on all of those things working together.
Totally. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought it up too, because I had it in my notes too. Like, how's that Abbott Elementary? Tell me everything, which you already talked about. But I was going to ask specifically, how did you start working with them? Was that also because of the connections that you had made during your directing career?
Yeah, so Randall Einhorn, who's the
Right.
producing director, an EP and director on Abbott, is someone I met. I met Randall like in 2007. The funny thing about that is I was doing this pilot for Comedy Central, and Randall at the time was both DPing and directing, and I hired Randall as my director of photography for this pilot I did for Comedy
Mm.
Central. So that's how we met, and then we kept in touch, and he was became this amazing director, and I don't remember the first thing I did, but I had done the show called The Kids Are All Right with Randall at ABC. I did a few episodes of that with him, and we really loved working with each other. So then when he got Abbott, he called me and asked me if I was interested in coming in and doing a couple episodes on this brand new show. I was like, yeah, sure. And uh, And I did, and it became what it is. And it's funny, my family and I had just moved to we live in Italy right now. We've lived there for a little over 4 years.
Wow.
And Abbott was the first thing I did after moving to Italy. I'd only lived in Italy like 6 weeks, and I flew back to LA. And I remember being on set with one of the showrunners, Patrick Shoemaker, and you're getting to know someone. He's like, oh, wait, where do you live? He's like, oh, I live here, and he's like, where do you live? And it was a thing where I hadn't really told people that we moved because I didn't know how it would be perceived and whether it was like okay to not live in LA. And he's like, where do you live? I was like, Italy. Like I remember I said it as a question. He's like, what? And then his response was so great. And then he started telling people on set, people like came up to me, and I realized like, oh, I need to own this. And I moved to Italy. Like no one cares. It's amazing. So that's just like a funny side thing that happened on my first episode of Abbott. But getting back to how it happened. Yeah. So it was Randall. He brought me in, and then I think season 2, I did 2 episodes, and then I go back every year for an episode, and it's so fun.
I mean, I was looking. It looks like March was the last one, so I wonder if you'll. I know you will, but they're in their new season now. Are you slated to come back on? Are you allowed to say?
Well, the unfortunate thing is I was offered an episode to come back, and because I'm on this new series that I'm shooting here called Best Medicine for Fox, I'm the producing director on that. So we're doing 13 episodes. I couldn't do it. And Randall was so nice. And he tried to move it around, and he offered me a later episode, and we unfortunately couldn't make the dates work. So I'm so bummed.
Bummer.
So this is the first season that I'm not going to be there, but it's only because of a wonderful problem that I have that I'm working on a series. But Randall was really nice at the end when we couldn't work it out. He's like, I'll see you in season 6. So hopefully I will be back.
Yeah, totally. Is there a lot of differences with Parks and Abbott, or do you feel like it's very similar? You kind of know what you're doing now?
I mean, there are definitely similarities in terms just by virtue of the style and how you have to block. When you block scenes for 3-camera docu style, you have to really think very differently. And what's really great about Abbott that Randall has done there is that he really holds you to the docu style. So in other words, if there's a scene that starts in the teacher's lounge and goes into the hallway and it's continuous, you are charged with figuring out how to shoot it in a way where all of the shots you have are realistic for the camera crew to be in the teacher's lounge. And if it moves outside, how do they get outside without seeing each other to then get the coverage you need in the hallway? Because if you can't do it in the way that a real crew would do it, then you can't do it. And that in and of itself, it creates a really interesting thought process in prep and really interesting blocking. And it has forced me to come up with ways to shoot some of my scenes in Abbott in a way that if that rule wasn't there, you shoot this like, all right, then we'll take a hold and we'll bring him out here. You can fake it and like get the cameras in position. But like, it was like, no, we're following them. You got to keep this real. And as a result, some of the shots on Abbott are kind of like, just super docu style and really interesting. And I think it's a nice evolution of that format to kind of keep it. It keeps it so it's not, even though you're shooting 3 cameras, you have to block sort of proscenium style, but it forces you to create things that are interesting and more visually interesting than just like, all right, we got 3 cameras covering this scene.
Interesting. Okay, cool. And that cast too, I'm sure is really fun to work with. They're also such superstars.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Love that. Yeah, definitely. Well, one of the things that I do like to ask, and it's kind of annoying, I guess, but as far as like if you were to tell either yourself 20 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, or if you were to tell someone who's just kind of starting out in directing, what kind of pep talks or advice or kind of what would you talk about to them? Again, it could be yourself or someone else. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but just curious off the top of your head what you would tell people who are trying to get into this industry and yourself back when you were trying to get more into this industry.
Yeah, I mean, I have these conversations fairly frequently. Like I just had a shadow on just directed a block of 2 1-hour episodes on Best Medicine, and I had a shadow who was with me. He was with me all 3 weeks of prep and almost every second of the 3 weeks of shooting. So we had a lot of conversations recently about this. And I mean, the main things that I always talk about are the persistence and the tenacity. Like if you really want to do it, if you don't really want to do it, then you won't end up doing it. And if you really want to do it, then you'll work and you'll figure it out and you'll make it happen. It's a lot harder now. Like, obviously we have a little bit of a contraction of the business and things are spread out in all different markets, and it's a very hard time to kind of break in. So the updated advice is, and also because of like when I was coming up, you couldn't just go shoot something on your phone. Like you didn't, like when I was in college, like we didn't have access to gear. Like it was hard to get access to gear and to be able to shoot stuff. And now you can, like, if you want to direct and you haven't made anything, there's really no excuse. You need to just go make stuff. So my thing that I say now is like, make stuff, go shoot stuff on your iPhone, like write it, shoot it, figure it out and make it. And you'll learn from editing it and figuring out what the music is. And that's a great way to learn what your style is and how to put things together and how you think you would shoot things. And it's good training for working with actors, even if they're your friends that you're getting together to make stuff. Like you just have to make things. And if you don't make things and you don't have things to show, you won't end up directing. So, and especially, obviously AI is an incredibly controversial topic right now. But in terms of like, if I'm a young director, let's say I just got out of college and I have no connections in the entertainment business and I'm trying to figure out what to do and I don't have the resources to go like do a big shoot, what I would do is I would learn every single AI tool and I would make something, not in a way that wants to replace people, but to show I know how to make something. Because if you're using Veo 3 and you're using Midjourney and you're using Runway and you're using Kling and all these AI tools, you still have to use your brain to prompt and figure out a style and what the shots are. And if you have to create it shot by shot and performance by performance and edit it together and add music and do these things. So even if you are utilizing AI as your tool to do it, I heavily advise to learn that stuff and learn how to make stuff, because it's still the same process you go through in terms of designing your scene, designing your shots, crafting the performances, editing, what's the music, what's the VFX, what's the sound design. All of it is the same exact process, and it can show someone that you know how to tell a story. Like the main thing is like you have to be a visual storyteller, and if you can use those tools to show that you're a visual storyteller, it's at least something. So that's kind of the 2025 version of my advice.
Yeah, that's great advice. Because, yeah, AI is good for a tool. I still think it can be used as a tool. I mean,
Yeah.
Riverside, what I'm using now is classic AI, for captions and all that kind of stuff and social media, whatever, which is very helpful. But yeah, but I still have to talk to you
Yeah.
and create something.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna propose that like Abbott Elementary replaces actors with AI or replaces any jobs with AI. But if you're just making stuff that's a calling card and you want to make something and you don't have money to hire a crew and rent gear and go do stuff, but for a couple $100 you can buy tokens on the app and figure out how to make something, then that's what you should be doing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And when you say college, like you had just gotten out of college, did you do directing in college or film studies or anything like that?
So I transferred to USC as a junior, and funny enough, I didn't get into the film school. And so I ended up doing a make your own.
Jokes on them.
I know, exactly. So I did a make your own major where I got to take the bulk of my upper division classes from the film school. So I was locked out of some of the classes, but I also had a lot of access, and I learned a lot there. And I didn't study directing specifically, but took a lot of amazing film classes and learned a ton. But during the summer between my junior and senior year, I started interning for that company where I, when I had to meet Katie Lang at the gate at CBS Radford.
Yeah.
And that internship was really valuable because they were shooting all sorts of stuff. And I got to witness a lot really immediately. And during my first paid job in this business came from that internship, because I got the internship in the summer of 1993. And then that August, like just a few months later, that company was producing the 1993 MTV Video Music Awards, the VMAs. And I went to my the guy I was reporting to. Later we became very, very good friends. His name Dave Cunningham. I went to Dave and I said, hey, like this company's doing the VMAs, right? He's like, yeah. I was like, can I go be a PA on that show? And he's like, you would want to do that? I was like, are you kidding me? Of course I would want to do that. So he just called over and was like, yeah. And then so I got hired for my first paying job for 9 days in August of 1993. And I remember it was 9 days in a row, and I made $100 a day. And I was like, I would have done it for free. I would have paid them to do it. And it was just this really incredible thing. I had to miss my first week of classes of my senior year of college to do this job. But I did it, and it was such an amazing thing to witness and to be a part of. And I made money, which at the time that's still a lot of money. $900 is a lot of money. And this is like, I was a senior in college and totally broke and working 2 jobs. And then I got to do this. And then throughout that senior year of college, because I'd done that for MTV, I was picking up paid PA gigs throughout my senior year from MTV. They called me for stuff.
Okay.
And then when I got out of college, I'd done a couple commercials. I got out of college, I had like a little client base for work. And then not long after that, I got a job at the company where I interned, and I ended up working there for 5 years as a staff producer. So it all but it started from that internship.
Yeah, totally. Well,
Yeah.
and for this person that's shadowing you, how does one go about doing that? Did they just reach out to you like I did, or you know what I mean?
He was introduced to me by a friend, my good friend, Dan Levy, who's a really talented writer and comedian. Not Schitt's Creek Dan Levy, but
the other one.
stand-up comedian, showrunner, show creator, Dan Levy.
Isn't that so funny that they have the same name? That is so crazy.
I know. So anyway, he introduced me. It's a guy that does he's like some writing and writer's assistant, but he went to Emerson and wants to be a director, and he asked me if I would meet him. So I met him on Zoom, and then he asked, he's like, would there be an opportunity to shadow? And I was like, yeah, anyway, you have to clear it with the network and the studio and all that. And he flew himself out here, put himself up, and hung with me for 6 weeks.
That is so great. Again, with your tenacity and just asking, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Love that. Okay, cool. Well, I didn't mean to get all nerdy about like the industry part of it, but I'm I love a behind the scenes moment. So that's where that goes. But let's talk about, as we wrap up, kind of the new show that you've got going on. So what is it? Tell me everything.
What's exciting is that it's the first ever promo for the show actually just aired last night during Game 6 of the World Series, which is super exciting. And it was a great way for us to end. It was very late on a Friday night, and we all found out that we were getting promo during the World Series. It was really exciting. But the show is called Best Medicine. It's a new 1-hour comedic drama for Fox. It's going to start airing in January, and it's based on a UK series called Doc Martin that ran for many, many seasons and was wildly popular in the UK and Europe. And then a lot of people I've found in the US are aware of it as well. Like my father and stepmother were huge fans of the British version. They watched it on PBS. People have watched it on Acorn. So this is the US adaptation of that series.
Okay, cool. Which is similar. I was going to ask you about Ghost too, because Ghost is a UK adaptation, or US adaptation, I suppose, of a UK show. And you've directed that a couple times too, right?
Yeah, I'm actually going to go back to Ghosts in January, February to do 2 more episodes. Because I wrap on Best Medicine in December, a little before Christmas, and then I'm going to go back to Ghosts for 2 more of those.
Fun.
So. Yeah.
My mom and I watch Ghosts all the time. Super fun. I'll be looking for your name on the next time. As far as Best Medicine goes, was that something that you were helping develop here, or were you reached out to be a producer on it after it was already kind of developed?
Yeah, no, it was something that they were looking for a producing director for the show, and I was, a candidate that interviewed. I had to do 3 interviews to get the job. I interviewed
Okay.
with the showrunner, Liz Tuccillo, who's amazing, and Rodney Farrell, who's the other EP. He's at Propagate, the production company behind it. So I interviewed with the 2 of them, and I had to interview with the studio, and I had to interview with the network, and I was lucky enough to be the one that was selected to do it. So I climbed on board as an executive producer, and I'm directing 3 of the 13 episodes in this first season. So I did 2 already, and I'm going to be directing the finale and taking us home at the end of season 1. So yeah, we're in the midst of it right now.
That is so exciting. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll keep an eye out for that. I'll post about it too so that people can, keep their eyes peeled.
Thank
Yay.
you.
Love that. Okay. Well, the last question that I always ask our guests is, other than a director, who do you relate to the most on Parks? Like, who would you say? I feel like I'm a Leslie for the most part. Maddie, my co-host, who sometimes hosts with me, considers herself an Anne. She has Leslie vibes, but more so an Anne. So I'm curious how you feel and which character you relate to the most.
Oh gosh, that is
Doesn't
such
have
a
to be
great
gender
question.
specific or anything.
No, that's a great question. I feel like depending on the moment, I alternate between Leslie and Iran because a lot of times by virtue of what I'm doing, I have to be the leader and the cheerleader, and come on, even when in times of distress, I'm got to keep everything going with that incredible positivity.
Yeah.
But in a fun way, I think that there's the cynicism of Ron that I use to sort of humorously deal with the intensity of this kind of a job sometimes.
Yay! I love that. Oh my God. Yeah, I feel like I kind of, we can all be every character. You can oscillate between them all, I feel. So that's a good answer. I could see that for sure. And people are very self-aware. When I've asked before, I'm like, oh yeah, you're a total Retta. Well, thank you so much again for doing this. I hope that you break a leg on all of your upcoming projects. We'll definitely be posting about them so that people can, look out and everything. I appreciate your time so, so much. It helps us and just is a passion of my life. So thank you.
Cool. No, thanks so much for having me. It's been it's been fun to revisit Parks, and again, like I said, I haven't watched the episode in so many years, so it's fun to watch it and just give it some thought. And I really appreciate you asking me to be part of it. So thanks.
Yeah, of course. Well, and yeah, now that Peacock is, all the streaming services really started with Netflix, but now that Peacock has its own thing, I feel like The Office, all these shows, Parks have such a resurgence now. So it's really nice to see different generations, look at this and be like, oh my gosh, how great. So love that. Yay. Cool. Well, thank you again so much. I hope you have a lovely day, week, everything. And thank you again.
All right. Thanks. Likewise. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
There's a park and some pals, and there's also therapy too.